You can tell me when the YouTube's up, Brian, and I'll start the meeting.
I think we're up.
Yeah, I see it now. Great. So today is September 17th. It's 7:05. You can tell me when the YouTube's up, Brian, and I'll start the meeting. Now I'm hearing myself twice. Hopefully not now. All right, whatever that was.
Not sure what that was.
Me neither. September 17th, it's 7:05. I'm bringing the Ordinance Regular Committee meeting together right now. We have in attendance Josh Goldstein, Johan Lopez, Nora Najewski-Eitner, Yalen Seed, and me. So we have a quorum, so we're in good shape. Is there anybody here for public comment that you can see, Brian?
Oh, I also see Nicole Eady as a participant.
Yeah.
She should be a panelist.
Oh, she can move over. And you know, Jim Frere may attend also, and he can be brought over.
I just promoted Nicole.
Okay, great. So
She
she
should
is
be
not a
coming
committee
over.
member, but happy to be a panelist.
She's coming through right now. Diane Larchell has her hand raised, so in a moment I'm gonna call on her.
Great.
All right. All right, Diane, if you could just unmute yourself, lower your hand, give your full name and address for the record, and then you can go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair, for the record, my name is Diane Lauricella, 21 Little Fox Lane in West Norwalk. Tonight, I just wanted to comment on two of the items on your agenda. Number 6, the complete streets discussions. I wanted first to thank this council, the staff, administration, and the public for continuing to support and moving forward on complete streets. Very important for the future of our developing and safe and sustainable town. But on the items, I did have a chance to listen quickly, not to the entire discussion, but enough of it, that I do want to lift up some comments that were made at your last meeting on the 3rd. The first is on the definition, under the definitions for the committee, where it talks about who the members should be. I very much agree with Nora Najewski-Eitner's discussion about adding elected officials from this common council. Unless and until we elect our planning and zoning commissioners, dependent upon, and I've been around for a long time, some of the chairs are not listening to the public. The current chair we have might be, tries to do his best, but I've also lived through chairs that couldn't stand the public comment. Not the current one, but many years ago, different administration. So I do want to see if you could put that back under discussion and put that back on the table, that at least 2 elected officials on the council. There are also no Board of Ed members, and we, of course, have children that are walking and biking to school. Also, I guess it's number 3 on your list, 1-9 on progress reporting. I believe $50,000 is way too large an amount for the staff to have to go back to the reporting authority. I've been seeing this grow in many different committees of the Common Council, that the identifying amount, the trigger, is getting larger and larger. So for this, I want you to rethink it and maybe cut it in half. Then lastly, on chapter number 7, chapter 90, the operations and public works. I believe on item B, and I'll speak very quickly, the collection and disposal, it's more definitions, collection and disposal of solid waste in accordance with state statutes. There is no mention of what is the current manner and practice in the work of solid waste, and that includes reduction and recycling. So I would like to see if you would think about putting in some discussion in the description about reducing, identifying, assessing waste streams, and seeking to reduce those waste streams. There's nothing about energy efficiency in the process of the DPW, and that is also, I think, a missed opportunity. Lastly, in 90-2, the chief would no longer need to be an engineer, a licensed professional engineer. I believe that's a mistake. In a way, it's dumbing down, quite frankly, an important and expensive administrative position. So I think that that is a mistake, because of all of the other, mainly most of the work that this particular chief does has to do with indirectly or directly engineering. And lastly, 90-7, it talks about record keeping requirements. Again, I was a little bit surprised that items B and C were crossed out, where expenses and reporting were seemingly no longer the responsibility of the chief. And I guess I would like to know where in the operation of the department are expenses and reporting found, and where are they accountable to the public as well as to the council. So I thank you for letting me speak. I will be inquiring about this because it's near and dear to my heart, public works. I think we should modernize our language around it, and that includes energy efficiency, renewable energy, and reduction of waste streams. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Diane. Are there other hands up?
No, that's it.
Okay, great. So I'm going to close public comment, and I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of our special meeting on September 3rd. Thank you, Josh. All in favor of accepting the minutes? Well, first of all, I should say, does anybody have a change? Hearing none, is everybody in favor of accepting the minutes as filed? Thank you. Great. So our first item on the agenda is our old business, which is to discuss and vote to hopefully public hearing the Complete Streets Ordinance. Now, turn matters over to Josh, who's been holding the pen on this.
Thank you, Lisa. So, and in all fairness, and while we're doing kudos at the beginning here, Lisa has been an enormously helpful partner in helping to make this a reality. Obviously, a lot of work's gone into this. I know that there really aren't a whole lot of changes since the last time we talked about this. And frankly, we've had good meetings with TMP and DPW about this. One thing that I want to note, you can see on the second page, the definition of improvement project has been eliminated. There's no nefarious reason for this other than this is a term that just really isn't used in the ordinance. It was a term that we found from, pretty sure, Condot. But it ended up not really being necessary for the ordinance. And I think when we talked to Garrett and the team at TMP, it was not a definition that needed to be in this ordinance or used in this ordinance. Lisa, I am forgetting because I literally let the dog eat my homework. There were a couple very minor changes, some of which you can see that are just grammatical. And then
I think we go to 1.7. Is that where we added sewer?
Yes. Yes. We added
Sorry,
what?
could I interrupt to just make a request, Brian? Could you zoom in because it's actually not very readable.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. We just need to, someone needs to tell me where in 1.7. I'm trying to find it and it's not.
It's 17A3.
Yeah. There you go. Is that better, Nora? Can you see that better?
It is, although if it might even need to be a tiny bit bigger just because Brian's screen is so large, it's still pretty small in the screen share.
And we are so old.
We are so
now.
sadly. Thank you.
I'm not going to hear about that from you guys.
No, I've been reading glasses for
So it's 17A3. You see where it says the transportation product will have a de minimis impact on the mobility system, including crack sealing, striping, maintenance, cleaning or sweeping, drainage improvements. Yeah, after draining improvements, just include the word sewer, comma, or signal, or you don't even need the comma.
You don't need the comma,
or signal notifications.
Well, do you get rid of that or, and you leave the other?
Yeah, get rid of that or. So
There is a
sewer,
comma.
signal notifications or similar activities enumerated in the design guide. That was a request for DPW because Complete Streets really isn't about sewage. And we wanted to make sure that that was clear.
And then in
Lisa, I forgot the...
in 1.8, they wanted to have the exceptions go to the committee, to the whole committee.
Yes. So in the original version of this, as you can see, the report goes initially to the chief of the Complete Streets coordinator, i.e. the director of the TMP, the request was to have any exception report just go first to all of the members of the Complete Streets Committee as a matter of transparency, and in case, as happens sometimes, there are issues that or have other implications that may fit within the expertise of one department more so than another. So as a matter of, frankly, transparency and just hopefully good governance, we're saying that an exception report just has to be sent to all the members of the Complete Streets Committee, but obviously still gives the Complete Streets Coordinator sort of the responsibility of running the process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those were the two major changes that we took from our last meeting with DPW, who otherwise was comfortable with the ordinance as drafted.
Yeah, and Garrett, since this was raised in public comment, there was a rationale when we talked about the 1.9 progress reporting and the $50,000. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the rationale was that most of these projects are well above that number. So
yeah, this is meant to be reporting this is meant to be end of the year reporting, annual reporting for larger infrastructure projects. For example, there's, for less than $50,000, there's things like installing crosswalks, doing mid-block crosswalks, enhanced crosswalks, sidewalk gaps, things like that we just do on a regular day basis. So it was really to provide the reporting on the large projects and how they're going through this process.
Yep. Yeah, and again, this is, you've seen this before, in terms of the ordinance. The structure of the ordinance really hasn't changed since the last time we talked about it, last meeting. And obviously this is something we put a lot of work into, and we're very excited. At this, does anyone have any additional questions?
Well, just one more thing to mention. We've taken this through the DPW group. We've taken this through the Bike Commission. TMP has been integral to the first draft and whatnot. So there's been a lot of.
And also, by the way, Corporation Council has looked at this. The mayor's office has looked at this. So there have been a lot of people inside the city, and obviously we've gotten suggestions from outside stakeholders as well, including from the Bike Walk Commission and transportation advocates. And so there's definitely been a lot of input solicited and implemented in this ordinance.
Exactly. And then the next, we also have shared this with planning and zoning. They've gone through it, and we're trying to coordinate. We had like some part of the, some of you might have heard us talk a little bit about trying to coordinate the definitions of some of these terms throughout both planning and zoning regs and our Complete Streets, as well as other DPW types ordinances. So there's pretty much good coordination on it. There's one or two places where there's, for planning and zoning, they obviously are going to have much broader realm, broader definition for public realm, but we're in good shape. We feel like we've gotten a lot of city feedback. So turning it over to the committee for any.
Lisa and Josh, just real quick on 1.7A1 and subsection A, we have transportation project or a portion of a transportation project. And then in A1, it says the use of the transportation project. The question is, are we replacing any of the transportation project language with transportation facility? That is a defined term, but it doesn't show up anywhere in the ordinance.
Oh, that was one of the things we had on your list.
Yes, actually.
Thank you, Brian. We'd forgotten about that. Garrett, we had reached out to you about that, about the between project and facility. That was one question we didn't know. We do have definitions for both of them, but we don't use transportation facility. We just want to make sure that we're using the right term.
I think in 1.7A1, the intention was to use actually transportation facility in that definition as opposed to transportation project, just because of some really small minor nuances. So for example, under Complete Streets, transportation projects cannot have like a user group prohibition. That would really be in direct conflict with the definition of complete streets and really the spirit of the ordinance. However, certain facilities or transportation facilities, by their very definition, might exempt certain user groups by law.
Mhm.
I'll give an example. The simplest example would be an expressway where statutorily bicyclists or pedestrians are allowed. So that's really meant to address any of those unique prohibitions, which would really exempt a project or a part of that project from having to meet certain complete streets requirements.
So Garrett, A1 would then read the use of the transportation facility when identified user is prohibited by the law or by law or regulation.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And is that the only place that you want facility replacing project in 1.7?
Yep, I think that definition was really intended for this exemption section,
Okay.
so that
Yep.
would be the only place in the ordinance.
I agree. And yes, and this was something we had previously discussed. So yes.
So Lisa, just real quick, I found the things that we were talking about. I believe it's sanitary sewer in 1.7A3, not just sewer.
Is that what we should use? That's the proper phrase?
That is the phrase that was recommended.
Okay, let's do that.
Yep.
Anything else from your notes, Brian?
Yeah, 1.5E. In coordination with. the
Oh,
chief
yeah,
of
that's right.
DPW.
We wanted to give a
Yes.
broader,
Yep.
yes,
Where do you want that? At the end of it or at the beginning?
the end.
Hmm.
There's one more after this.
Yep.
I'm just going to put DPW for now. I'll switch the language in a second and or the principal.
Engineer.
Hmm.
Again, I'll make the change afterwards because I don't think principal engineer is a defined term, but
Do we need to say principal engineer? If it's the chief of DPW, they get their, I mean, the chief engineer works for them. And if it's not a defined term, I don't know that we want to add a defined term.
I don't think I think it was consultation, not coordination.
Yeah, it was consultation and
consultation, I have coordination, but consultation's fine with me.
I think we suggested the word consultation.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need to add principal engineer because the principal engineer works for the chief of DPW who should make their thoughts known.
Okay. Again,
Adding the
I'll
definition.
switch the DPW language in a second. I'm just trying to get to the ones that we have here. 1-4A.
We were keeping track of this because we wanted to keep everybody's feet to the fire. And we were saying, I think what we decided on this, Brian, was
Yeah.
that it's a de minimis change if we say 45 days, if we end up saying it has
Yeah,
to.
it's
design.
either, I think
Yeah,
the
so
discussion
we-
was between 30 and 45 days, but that's
We-
not a substantial or significant change.
Right. So just
Let me just put 45
little-
in parentheses.
no.
No,
No?
leave it 30.
No, leave it at 30. And the reason, so everyone understands, is we, in the last draft, put in a deadline of when the design guide needs to be adopted. One of the things that's happening right now is that obviously the design guide hasn't been approved yet. There are going to be discussions and meetings between DPW and TMP to review and give feedback for the design guide. But we want to make sure that this gets adopted and we don't want this to get indefinitely delayed. So we did put in a time requirement. Obviously, we can extend that time requirement at the time of the public hearing if that's really necessary, but I'm just going to level with everyone and say, I really, really hope that isn't necessary. And I've made that representation to both TMP and DPW.
Nora,
So-
your question in 1 second, just to make sure that all the changes are made. Do you have anything else on the list, Brian, that we might have missed?
One final one. I don't know if it's a change or not. Definition of transportation facility. As this involves bridges, tunnels, and other elements of heavy infrastructure, the role of the engineering department should be designated. That was the note that I had. Again, there's no specific change, but that was there.
Yeah, I know we talked about it. I don't,
Again, I don't think it would be a significant or substantial change if minor changes had to be made to a definition.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we weren't going to make a change, Josh. I think we noted it, but I think we felt like
Yeah.
we should leave it be.
I think that's fine.
All right, Nora, you have a question? But you might be muted.
Yeah, sorry, I was hitting the wrong button to unmute myself. And we don't need to do it right now. Since you were talking about the timing on the guide, I wanted to raise again that I think there needs to be a public hearing on the guide for the initial guide. So there is one for the amendments and we don't have one for the initial. And I think that needs to be added and that will change the timing. So I think that should be considered and reflected.
Yeah, let's think about that, Josh.
I mean, let me take a look here. No later available. You're saying, Nora, a specific public hearing for the basically a one-time, not one time only, but for the first design guide, that there should be a public hearing.
Correct.
I mean,
Okay.
we knew that we were going to post it. I mean, I think we had thought for sure it should be posted.
Yeah, I mean, the debate, one of the issues that we've been considering, and obviously there should be certainly a forum for public comment. But design guides, and Garrett, you're going to have to fill in because this is not my expertise, but design guides are technical documents. They're not, this isn't like, let's, talk about, like a complete streets policy would be it's a different kind of document than a design guide, which is a really sort of a user manual for how to implement complete streets. However, I do think, as someone who believes in transparency, that there's no reason why we couldn't have a public hearing for this. But Garrett, is my description of the design guide like inaccurate?
No, it'll be a very technical document that relies and references other technical documents. The way we I think modeled the comment and the public comment is based after other similar documents, federal guidelines. The Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices is very similar to how we address amendments. I don't think we have any issue with the first adoption of the design manual going through the same process as any amendments would go through, in which we publicly notice the guideline, we put it out, we collect comments, and we address all the comments once received, and once reviewed. It will have some impact on the timeline. So just for your consideration,
Okay.
That would be an additional window of time that would just need to be.
And I think that's an additional window on adoption, but that doesn't really change the window on when it needs to be completed, because then that version, whatever that version, that completed version is, that's the version that would be going to the public.
Yeah, and there might be after public comment some minor revisions.
Sure.
We could always call that the first amendment.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I have no real opposition to. I think that I realize we're doing this on the fly, but I have no objection to the process Garrett suggested.
So we would publish it.
Or is that were you thinking?
Yeah,
different?
I think that's our standard process. It publishes, you get 30 days, there's public comments period. I think that's fine. It should look, the same in the initial as it does for the amendment.
Then
and I agree that you can then, you can keep again, I still think 30 days may be pushing it, but you guys have had the conversations. But regardless, you can certainly keep the date where it needs to be posted the same, but then it'll just push back on the adoption. But I think that's valuable for transparency.
Okay, I have no objection to that.
So let's build that in now, because that shouldn't be too hard to build in.
Or where do you want that?
I would start at, I would do this in A. So 1.4A, because we're
1.4A.
Yeah, so we're directing them to design a complete. Well, hold on a minute.
Well, let's think like we only direct them to develop one no later.
You know what? In B, which talks about the amendment process, we could add a line at the end and say something about how, for the initial adoption of the design guide, this process shall be effective for, for the initial adoption of the design guide, in addition to any subsequent amendments, or I don't know, I'm making this language up, but it's basically saying we are going to follow this process for the first adoption, or the initial adoption of the design guide. And then any subsequent amendments would be subject to the same process. Nora, does that jive right, or is that?
I'm feeling like maybe we could just take that, say where any proposed amendment shall be made available. Can't we say the design guide and any subsequent proposed amendment shall be available? Can we do, see where it says any proposed amendments? Maybe we just say the design guide and any proposed subsequent amendments shall be available. How about that?
And then you're gonna need similarly, like later in that sentence, before any amendments are finalized, so before the design guide and any amendments.
Okay.
I think
Yep.
that's the easiest way to do it.
What was that? Hold on. The design guide and any subsequent amendments shall be available at the city clerk's office, and an electronic version shall be available on the city website for 30 days before.
The
Before
design
the
guide,
design guide or
Any
any
amendments.
amendments. Yep,
I think that
that's
does.
very simple. That's elegant.
How do you like that, Nora? It's okay?
yeah, I think that's fine. I think that works.
Good.
Okay.
Other questions or comments from committee members?
Sorry, but just one more thing then. I do think that you then may need to change the adoption date, because I think the adoption date is 30 days after, and now it's gonna have to be 30 days after the posting.
Well,
Should we say the?
no.
We could
Because
still
the
keep it.
completion of the design guide, now we're adding this public hearing requirement, Nora. So it's the.
No, yeah, sorry. There's another place though where you say the design guide has to be completed in 30 days. I think it's much earlier in this.
Hold on, I'll find it.
That's what I think needs to be changed potentially.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
This is called drafting without a net.
Yeah, mobility is misspelled.
Thank you for catching that.
Yeah.
I think it's 14A,
Thank you.
which Nora is referencing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, there it is. There it is. The city is directed to develop a complete street guide no later than 30 days after the adoption of this chapter.
Okay, so actually that might be fine then, because it
Yeah,
doesn't
I
say it
actually
has
think
to
that's
be.
okay because we're saying it's yeah.
Okay,
And we've
no, that's fine
detailed in the
then.
next, Nora, we've detailed in literally the next paragraph.
Right. No, I think that's fine then. I think you're right. It doesn't, 'cause
Yeah.
it doesn't say it
Okay.
has to be adopted. It just has to be done. So I think that's fine.
Okay.
All right.
Keeps
Cool.
everybody on their schedule.
Is anyone else raising their hands? I have it on share screen, so.
No.
Oh, hi, Jim.
Jim's been here. I didn't see when he popped in, but Jim Fryer from Common Council as well as Nicole Eady have both been here during the meeting.
Okay, so what we would like to do next is vote to take this to public hearing at our next meeting, which would be on October 15th, I believe, Tuesday, October 15th. So,
Check.
Nora, are you?
That's right.
Yeah, sorry, I had more questions. I was just.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Well, let's go over the question. Sorry, I thought
Sorry, I was,
It is-
I
it
knew,
is
I wanted to make sure
October
other people
15th.
were.
It is
Oh.
October 15th. I'll share the screen again. Hold on, Nora.
Thanks.
Yep. Go ahead.
So I also had flagged 13C1. I didn't understand why just these two elements were called out. Is there a particular reason? It just seems a little strange to me, like if we want to call out the fact that we're trying to emphasize facilities that are other than cars, there are other facilities, like in particular our public transit system, that I would think should be called out here. Or is there some particular reason that these two needed to be singled out?
13C1. I thought,
I do think what C1B, so I think the original intention of calling out those specific items is one, the importance of the trails, which aren't in every municipality, and the importance of that asset to the city. And we've started a number of projects related to the NRVT and the Harbor Loop Trail, and are looking to continue those and ultimately get one connected system. I think the second bullet was really to emphasize some of the modes of transportation that have historically, the investments in their infrastructure has lagged. So be in addition to the bicycles and the bicycle facilities and the network throughout the city. I think it does reference transit facilities and making sure that all users have access to public transportation, because I think we recognize that there's a desire to improve accessibility to the transportation system. So I think that was the spirit and the intent of those two items and why they were kind of separated and honed in on.
Okay, but as a drafting matter, B includes a bicycle network, comfortable pedestrian connections. Is that a separate thing, or is that, and then again, like it's access to the public transit, but it's not investments in the public transit. So,
But is public transit a goal of complete streets? Are those separate concepts? Garrett, can you help us understand, like?
Yeah, so I think it's making sure that there's like first and last mile connections, like there's sidewalk to bus stops, there's pads, there's connections from a bus shelter to the curbside, making sure that there's a sidewalk that actually gets you to the curb, and so that way you can unload on bus facilities. I think that was the spirit that we were looking at for that item, just making sure that the transit facilities and the stops and the stations are connected to the rest of the network.
But I don't think we're trying to improve the public transit, because that's not in the purview of complete streets, right? Is that what you're trying to, like, I'm trying to tease out what you're trying to get at, Nora. I mean,
yeah, I guess that is part of my question here, is sort of, so this is not intended to foster the growth of our public transit system. This is intended to foster, you're saying, the connections to the transit system.
It's the design of the streets in order to get to these types of connections, right?
But doesn't it also include things like, I mean, again, I'm pulling this out of an example, but it, bus lanes to expedite faster bus service, or, I mean, I really don't know. I'm asking this as a question. Like, I thought that this was intended to also include ways in which we could make our streets more usable for public transit, in particular, I would think buses, but does it not include things like, I don't know, curb cuts for bus stops, so that I'm really asking, like, I don't know. And so I just wanted to understand, or is that not part of this Complete Streets vision?
No, I certainly think it could be part of Complete Streets, and it is part of Complete Streets. Relooking at the cross section, reimagining the allocation of space on the roadway. So maybe there is an opportunity for an inset bus stop where a bus can pull in and not impact traffic, but also provide a better experience for users. I think a lot that's related to walkability. Transit doesn't exist or work without, walkable streets. So that's kind of why we were emphasizing the importance of pedestrian connections, and also a comfortable experience, right? Like, we think of amenities on the streets, like lighting, and trees provide shade, shelter, and a canopy. Lighting improves perceptions of safety around transit stops. So they are really integrated. We're not saying that, we have an entity that is in control of our transit, the Nora Transit District. But I think we're saying Complete Streets need to support transit. And to your point, it is looking at, in the future, if there's opportunities to improve bus operations, making sure we carve out space, for example, to put bus stops in the right space around intersections so they're not blocking through traffic. And it's also easier for bus stops to maintain their schedules as well. So those are just a couple of examples of how we look at the design of our streets.
But isn't that covered under safe, accessible, and comfortable pedestrian connections to transit? I mean, the goal is to make streets and the ability to get to transit facilities and public transportation better, but we can't really be in charge of transit, right? So I feel like that's what we're trying to.
And I also, Nora, these are a strategic choice that we made was to put the policy in the ordinance. There are other municipalities that haven't done that. When we drafted this, obviously it says the goals of the city further include the following. It's not included. It's not limited to these things, but the theme of this, I think, is pretty clear. But I hear you on, that the details do matter, and that making sure that that when we're talking about access for people to walk to places, take bikes to places, obviously, increasing sidewalk use, those are all integral parts of Complete Streets. But for, for purposes of drafting an ordinance, if you list every single thing, it can get pretty dense pretty quickly.
Yeah,
But
that's fine. I mean, I guess then I would just say that as a drafting matter, I think there should at least be a C here, which is safe and accessible and pedestrian. Like, I think B needs to be broken into two. Those are actually two different thoughts. A convenient bicycle network, and maybe that was
agree with
part of
that,
why I found
yeah.
that confusing.
I have
agree with
I have no objection to that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So this,
Yeah,
So
just make it.
Yep,
C.
you got it.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's two different thoughts. It probably should not have been mashed.
Yes, and this is the thing that happens with drafting, which is that you just look at it so many times, it starts to blend. So having other input, other people give input who haven't looked at this as much as we have is like enormously helpful. And that's
So-
the value of having a committee like this.
It's why it's
So-
really boring to watch us, but it's really helpful to.
Yeah, it's boring TV, but it's good governance.
Yes.
do you want transit facility to be a defined term in C or no?
Well, trans,
In
Is it
C, 1C. It's highlighted right now. Transit facility, I believe, is a defined term.
In this ordinance.
transportation facility is one, but not transit.
Yeah.
facility. No.
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
transportation. I'm sorry, not transit, transportation. I
it's not.
apologize.
All right. Other comments while we have your
Um,
attention, or you said you had a few?
Yep, I do. So 15B, again, this is just a technical thing. I think that there may need to be a 15B. So I think establishing, I think that second sentence needs to be its own paragraph. It looked like probably a drafting error. It may have accidentally gotten eliminated and brought in.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
She's right.
Thank you for reading so closely, Nora.
Yes, really.
Sorry, I can't help myself.
No, you
No,
and
it's
Tom
good.
are
It's good.
nitpickers.
It's
We
why we
like
do this.
nitpickers.
So I guess then my only other thing, I will, well, sorry, one other technical thing, and this, Garrett, may be a question for you, but bikes, do we need to reference at any place that there are other things like scooters, whether we're talking about electronic scooters or there are other kinds of alternative machines people use. Does that matter? Is that anything we need to reference or include?
We could go back to C, what was it, 13C.
Sorry, I was muted. So we do have an existing ordinance within our code that defines scooters and pocket motorcycles and mini motorcycles. I think at some point in time we should also look at updating that to address electric scooters because they aren't yet addressed in our ordinance, but I don't believe it's necessary for the adoption of complete streets. But it's certainly something that the city should take a look at in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was just
There's-
thinking about it in terms of, and I genuinely, this is genuinely a question. I have no idea if it makes a difference, right? But
Yeah.
I know we have a business in town that, was doing the electronic scooters and trying to encourage those as an alternate mode of transportation. Are those, and I genuinely don't know, like, are those appropriately ridden in bike lanes? And so is that something we should be facilitating, encouraging? Are we thinking too narrowly when we sort of limit it to bikes, or does it matter? And I have no opinion on this, really. I just wanted to sort of flag that if there's any reason we need to reflect that there might be other options, or if just referring to biking is sufficient to cover the concept, and there's not going to be differences in terms of what's needed, or it's not going to be perceived as exclusionary.
Yeah, I hear you. And like just in general, micro mobility devices has really blown up in the last decade, and there's just so many new devices on city streets. So I think we would recommend, I think it's chapter 81 of the ordinances, at a later date or further date, or is reviewed, and we take a look at it, because right now there's language that prohibits electric bikes, for example, operating on the roadways. So I think that probably needs some clarification, some cleanup. But I think that there is a place for it outside of this ordinance. And I think it makes sense to look at that ordinance and look at updates. But there's just so many micro mobility devices. I think we want to make sure that we kind of capture all the possible use and case scenarios on our streets.
And
So
is
instead of-
micromobility referenced in this? That's a new term for me. So is micromobility is the term of art? Do we reference that here? I just don't know. I don't remember whether I saw. Oh yeah. Okay. It's in complete streets.
Mhm.
Or it's in the, okay.
It's in the definition. And it shows up in user, group, or user. That's the two it shows up in definitions only.
Okay.
I mean, the only thing we could maybe do is go back to 13C1, if you go scoop back up, where we say a safe and convenient bicycle network, we could say micro, whatever you just called that, micro
Micromobility.
mobility network. Maybe we say that. How do people feel about that?
I mean, it seems to make sense to me if that is.
We shouldn't just leave it to bicycles. How about that, Garrett?
Yeah, I guess my preference, I guess I'd lean to if it could be both. I kind of go back
could do
to
both. We could say bicycle.
historically, really the investments in the network has lagged when it comes to bicycles. So, clearly kind of calling that out in the ordinance was, I think, important to us. But micro mobility is something that's really just exploded over the last decade, and there's more and more. Every day you see a new type of vehicle on the street, right? So it's looking at how we address that moving forward.
So the way that we just changed it, is that okay with you?
Mhm.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm excited. I've learned a new term. Now I know what those are. So then I think the only other comment I wanted to flag, is again, this question of council participation, on the Complete Streets Committee. I do continue to have concerns that this, again, not necessarily on the private projects. And I think, again, that is a little bit of I understand that the committee is addressing both, but, for these larger public projects, I see value to having council input in them. I think that it would better inform council decision-making and understanding of sort of capital projects and the trade-offs that are going to come with some of these investments. And again, I do think that there is value to having folks who will have public accountability being part of these conversations. So, again, I've said my piece on that before, but I do want to raise it again before we really make a final decision, because I do think it's worth, conversation and making sure that everyone on the committee really has had a chance to think about what the advantages and, might be there. So.
I mean, look, I know that I appreciate what you said. I think it's a valid argument. My feeling on this is this committee is it's basically a review board for exception requests. Like I don't think this is the same argument than, like, for example, like transparency with the design guide, which there are certainly public policy or implementation effects that can happen by how the design guide's written and how it's followed. Here, this is a case-by-case review basis by a select group of people, including appointed officials. So not just people who work for the city. But we felt that insulating this from elected officials and concerns about political interference, especially if it involves a private project or a project wherein a council member can get basically lobbied. And I realize that, arguments regarding, public corruption or ethics, apply to the people listed on this committee as much as it does to elected officials. But I do think that elected officials are held to a higher standard. And the way I viewed it was I wanted to take the politics out of this. And by putting elected officials in it, I think that can present a certain set of challenges that was not something that I wanted to do for this exception review board. But I understand that people may not share my opinion on this.
Well, also we felt, and when we spoke to staff, this is an expertise. There's an expertise here, and you have to have a full understanding of the design guide. You have to understand like what the perimeters are. It just isn't really, and it's for exceptions. This is the rare case when these types of things, hopefully it's a rare case that these things come up, and we just felt like this isn't really a place for lay people to be involved. And we would hope
Yeah.
that the lay people
mean-
that are involved are the bike and walk people who are, you know, the people who really care about this and are kind of on the street looking at these things. And
Yeah.
it just didn't seem like this. I mean, there's place for public accountability, and there's lots. We hope that, you know, when we talk to DPW and TMP, they're proud of these projects and they like to bring these projects to us on a regular basis through our committees. But this is an exception committee talking about technical differences on, or people having objections on technical matters.
The only other thing I would say, though, is we still hold the power of the pen, Nora. And so if we feel that at a certain point that there should be members of the council or elected officials, I mean, I know there were suggestions of including other elected officials besides council members on this committee, we can amend this ordinance. I don't think we should right now. I like the way it's currently drafted, and I hope that the way it's drafted will work in practice. I also hope that exception requests are rare and not used to derail or slow down or impede or subvert the goals of complete streets. But if we find any of those things to be the case in practice, I have no problem saying tonight that we're willing to go back to the drawing board if we think that something needs to be revised.
Yep. And we can certainly see how it plays out.
Yeah.
And again, you know, I will reiterate that I feel like, you know, I don't think that there is any reason to think that elected officials are more susceptible to lobbying. And in fact, there's more attention to us, which is part of why I actually personally feel strongly that it's valuable to have people who are responsible for making project decisions be accountable to the public. But that's a larger issue in general, but I've said my piece and I appreciate it. And like I said, it's not for me a deal breaker on the ordinance. But I do think it's worth considering, and we'll see how it plays out.
Lisa,
Oh,
Jalen had his hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jalen, I remember seeing your hand up at one point, and I don't know if anybody else has comments.
Yeah, this is about something like with the micro mobility, but you guys answered all the questions.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Wow, we've been complete. So
Rare.
yeah. Well, we have another bite of the apple, which is after the public hearing, so we can talk about that then. Any other questions or concerns? And I invite also common council members who aren't in the committee who might have questions. Jim or
Paul
Nicole.
or Jim?
No, we're not putting you on the spot either. You don't have to make up a question just because I gave you the opportunity. So hearing none, should we
No,
now?
I'm just saying it's the level of excitement is pretty high here, and I can't think I can ask anything else.
Thank you. So having said all of that, can I have a motion to take this to public hearing at our next? There's Josh. Josh, you should take the motion. So thank you for all the hard work. All in favor of taking this to public hearing at our October meeting? Great. Thank you. Thank you, Garrett. I know that we sort of surprised you with your being on call tonight. So thank you. We're going to let you go.
Thanks, Garrett.
Thanks, Garrett.
Yeah,
Well,
thank
we
you for having
didn't
me.
really need him for 90, do we? Josh, we can do 90 without.
No, we can do 90, and
We're
90
just
we're not
introducing-
voting on tonight.
It's just an introduction.
So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Garrett, go spend time with your babies. See you later.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank
see you
you.
later.
Have a
All
good
right.
night.
Now we'll bring up 90.
Yeah, so Lisa, we'll do this together, but basically, Chapter 90 is the DPW ordinance.
And if you would, I want
Um,
to. Oh, thank you, Brian. You got it.
The
We'll
one
try
of the
to
things that
enlarge that too.
one of the things that we encountered in going through Complete Streets was a recognition that in order to effectuate the policy change, there were going to be some ordinances that exist that need to be changed. This is one of them. I don't think there are that many, but this is definitely a significant one. We've kind of taken a first crack at making some changes, both that are primarily relevant to Complete Streets. There are others where the changes were made just because we've kind of opened this up and aren't related to Complete Streets. I think I want to start in 90-1. Obviously E, there's an addition basically that that there needs to be collaboration with TMP on the supervision and coordination on public improvements related to planning and design, construction and maintenance of the mobility system, i.e. it's not DPW being solely in charge of streets anymore, where we're changing this now in accordance with Complete Streets. And you can see that when we say mobility system, we're referring to the definition that's in the ordinance that we've been talking about for a little while now. I'm going to move to H.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, some of these were stylistic changes. I don't remember any of these being particularly Complete Streets related changes in H.
So we took the opportunity to just clean up some language where we saw some opportunities.
Yep. Obviously, M is a Complete Streets related change.
Yep.
So I do want to talk about 90-2 because this came up in public comment and we had a meeting with DPW about this. Right now, obviously there is a professional engineering requirement for whomever the chief of DPW is. We, in this current draft, have omitted it, but I know that stakeholders, obviously most notably DPW, think we should rethink whether to cut this requirement. I'm frankly inclined to leave this in, but I know that this is something that there's been sort of active discussions in the city about. Lisa, I don't know if there was something you wanted to add about this specific thing.
No, basically, I think that this is something that we'll talk to the mayor's office about. We'll have another conversation with DPW and just get, drill down to feel like, is this really a requirement that we have to do, or do we feel as though this is something that is a nice to have, but not a have to have?
Right. So some of these, like a 90-4, you can see like this is not a Complete Streets related change. The city actually expends a lot of costs on these various sort of newspaper advertising requirements that are frankly somewhat dated. But I know that there are, and Brian, you can add this in probably in more detail than I can, about that there are certain laws that we have to comply with that frankly are just old. But we did eliminate these because I don't think that we have to do some of these things anymore. And so we're trying to modernize this.
I am in the process of taking a look at whether we have state statutes that mandate some of these items be put up in the paper that involve the DPW. So I'm taking a look at that issue.
So we may, as I was kind of alluding to, and I think Brian said it more clearly, we may need to reverse some of these proposed changes because we may be preempted by state statute. In which case, then we'll ask our state people to try and modernize. I don't really, it's a similar changes in B. Again, nothing really substantive about Complete Streets there. Sorry, my thing is moving slowly rather. So 90-6, this is actually a Complete Streets related change. This is an issue that has come up. It's about, since TMP will be sharing in the responsibilities, and it won't be that DPW is basically signing off on TMP street design projects. Basically, who is going to be the engineer who signs off, like literally signs off, on behalf of, in endorsement of the project. And so one of the things we wanted to do was open it up so that, if there's a qualified engineer in TMP who would have the ability to sign, that person would have the legal ability to do so. And it wouldn't just be that DPW is signing off on various basically TMP projects. Lisa, I don't know if I missed anything in that
That's pretty
explanation.
much it. So we're still working through the details on this is the one that's probably going to, this may change to some degree. We may have to come up with maybe both sign, maybe one sign. We're still kind of working through with both departments and the mayor's office.
Yep, but that's the basic gist. D is a complete streets change. Again, a lot of this is expanding because one of the things that you just have to remember with Chapter 90 is that this ordinance was created before the TMP department is like a recent thing. Like we didn't have one until several years ago. So a lot of this is doing some of the responsibility division and sharing. And that's exactly what you see in D here. Where the idea is that they're supposed to work together to do design standards regarding, for the mobility system. Obviously, there are going to be DPW items that are entirely their own, like sewer, wastewater management, various sort of specific engineering functions that TMP is not going to be involved with because that's not what they do. But in the aspects that appear in the DPW ordinance that do concern things that we're now saying sort of fall within complete streets and fall within TMP, we've made changes to that effect. There was a note in public comment about 90-7. I'm pretty sure the reason this was omitted was not to insulate a specific department, was because a lot of these records, I believe, are maintained by the finance department for all the departments.
Yes, that's why we did it, because they actually don't do this. So we
Yeah.
took it out. Rather than have them be in defiance of the ordinance, we took it out because they don't do it anymore.
And frankly, there are probably other ordinances throughout the city that would need to have similar changes made.
Yeah, so Brian, we're looking at the next page is where it
Yeah,
is.
the record keeping.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
So that's 90-7. That is not a complete streets change. That is a, we saw this and that's just not how this functions in the city anymore. Otherwise, that's pretty much the story in terms of these Chapter 90 changes. We're not bringing this to a vote tonight because there are frankly still issues we need to work through. But also we wanted your input and thoughts on how we're doing so far.
And just introduce the idea so that it doesn't come as a big chunk to absorb. So any thoughts from any of the council people on the call?
Could you just explain? I'm sorry, Nora.
No, go ahead, Jim.
Could you just explain to me what is the thinking behind not having a PE head of the department?
That's in 90-2, Jim.
Yeah.
There was just thought that you didn't have to have that function if you have a principal engineer on the staff already. If you had somebody who could sign the paperwork at DPW, that it could otherwise be handled by somebody else. We're not, we were open to the idea. Truthfully, it's not surprising anybody. Vanessa feels strongly that there should be somebody with a PE degree. So we're having a conversation with the mayor's office, if why they suggested that change, but having
I guess I'm thinking about if it was the finance department, you'd want somebody with some kind of financial certifications.
Yeah.
You could have somebody who's your reports to you, you tell them what to do. And if you're not an engineer, maybe you don't understand what that principal engineer is talking about. So you tell them, no, that's not the way it's going to happen.
The check is
that
the principal engineer has to sign. So if the principal engineer didn't think that the head of DPW got it, they wouldn't sign the documents, but you want to put people in that position. So we take the comment for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I'm
The-
thinking like
the other-
a
the other
CFO
mention-
will have to sign off on the financial statements when there's an audit done.
Exactly.
You can have a controller who does all the numbers and signs off and says, yeah, it's great, I agree with it. But the CFO is the one that has the ultimate responsibility. I mean, that's, it just popped out to me that having been a financial guy all my life and knowing that the top financial guy has got some kind of credentials that puts him in a key decision-making position.
No, we take the comment for sure.
Mhm.
Nora, you had your hand up.
I did, and I agree very much with Chair Frere on that. And I guess more generally, I wondered about an opportunity for the Public Works Committee to go through this ordinance and have a conversation at our committee about this, because I mean, as Ms. Loricella noted, there may be other things now that we're looking at this. There may be lots, other things that we want to update. And I would be I'd very much like to hear from Vanessa and the rest of the staff, about their perspective on their own sort of guiding ordinance before we made, further changes.
Maybe that's why I'm here tonight.
No, I agree, but I feel like all the committee members might want to.
No, I think I think they should take a look at it, really.
Yeah, we can
Mhm.
invite everybody to our next ordinance committee meeting. That's a great idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really beyond the complete streets changes. We were just cleaning up some little messes, but I think it's a good idea. We could do that.
Mhm.
Right, because as you said, if we're opening it anyway,
Yeah, I mean, it's the while you're at it type of thing.
right?
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like when someone's painting your house. Um,
Right.
so yeah,
It's just
I have,
so apropos.
it's literally what's going outside right now.
Yeah.
My door. So, but yes, yeah, Nora, I completely agree. I mean, no reason not to.
No, we'll tell you that our next meeting's October 15th, and I'll consult with my chair over at DPW.
Yeah.
And we'll invite you guys over to talk about it. We have to go back to DPW and TMP and the mayor's office with all of these changes, so it may look a little different than it does tonight, but we just want to introduce the idea because there's a lot to cover.
Well, and I mean, to the extent there is a time element to this is, for the complete streets related changes, like there is a real, not consequence, but basically like we're putting in the complete streets ordinance, but without these changes and without, frankly, there are other ordinances we're going to need to make some amendments to. Like complete streets will be the policy of the city when all of these changes are adopted, not just the complete streets ordinance. So it's a package. But I think that Nora's right, which is that everyone should weigh in. We're taking a look at this thing. We're modernizing our ordinances. Frankly, this was something that we were talking about sort of at the outset of charter revision, which was that there are a number of city ordinances that need to be relooked at. And I know that some of that has happened. A lot of it hasn't. So, I think it's a good opportunity, and I think we should all start getting in the habit of taking a look at a lot of sort of ordinances that haven't been touched in a little while.
With our very empty calendar. To do so. But yeah, we have big eyes for some of these things. So great. So I think we want to just do that. We've got Adam Blank here. Unless we want to have a lot more to say about this, we'll move to our next item, which I'm going to have Jalen talk about because this is in his district. So Jalen, the floor is yours to talk about this winners situation.
Okay, this is it's a big topic on our agenda. So it's just it's really currently Sports Techs they own the Winners venue here in Norwalk. It's in District A, right on Brunel. It's near like the bus hub. Currently on Sundays they can't allow betting. And this resolution is really to allow them to place and approve wagers on Sundays. Currently, people who want to place wagers, they can place them on Sundays, like via an app. So I see this as really an opportunity to allow a local business to be competitive and compete against the online venues. The mayor, as well as the police chief, has been contacted to just see if they were okay with this, and none of them had issues. And this is just really coming up to times. I mean, back on Sundays, liquor wasn't allowed on Sundays and betting wasn't allowed on Sundays. But now, with everything going on, it's good to just allow our businesses to be competitive. And we have Attorney Adam Blank here to answer any questions that we have, or maybe say a couple words. So I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you, Jalen. Listen, I think you did a great job, and it's kind of late, so I'm not going to add anything other than I'll answer questions. And if people have real concerns, I'm happy to kind of address them. But otherwise, I don't want to take up your time tonight.
So has everybody gotten a chance?
Thank you for showing up, Adam. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it,
you,
and for
Adam.
like speaking in so late with all of our complete street stuff. Has everybody gotten a chance to take a look at this or this resolution? Basically, we'll adopt the resolution here, and then we'll forward it on to the Common Council to approve at our next meeting. And this is allowed by state statute, right, Adam? That's the way that this is
It's actually required by state statute.
required. Yeah, we could do it by
Yeah.
ordinance, or we could do it by resolution, and resolution's the easiest and quickest.
And it's how
Adam,
other
if I'm not-
municipalities have done it.
Yeah, Adam, I was going to say, I think you said Stamford and other municipalities have done it this way.
Yeah, and in fact, I think the statute sort of says whoever's in charge needs to do it. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't say the
Right.
council. So, and it doesn't specify how others have done resolutions. I think it's been done through the Planning and Zoning Commission in a couple of municipalities. So, and every municipality that has a betting facility like this, that's horses and highlight, is open on Sundays. They all are.
Okay.
So our winners is not being able to keep up with everybody else's. So
It's
do
not winning.
any of our committee members have any questions about the resolution or concerns about the language? It's pretty straightforward.
No, I think this is very straightforward. I think it's I think there's no reason why we shouldn't have competitive businesses. I think winners should be open on Sundays to be able to do businesses. Add, if I'm not mistaken from the memo, I think this would add an additional 4 jobs as well, right?
Yeah, it's a number. It's about 4 jobs, and it also the town through the state gets revenue on bets placed in person, and they don't get it when you bet on your app on your phone. So it will raise, not huge, but it'll raise some revenue for the town, some jobs, and you may have seen in the news, but you know, within the next month or so, Sport Tech operates the facility there. They don't own the building, but the building, you know, I'm representing the building owner as well on their development plans, and there will be an application coming in to really completely redevelop that site, and it's kind of an eyesore now, and I think make it fabulous. And this, having Sport Tech as a vibrant tenant, successful, plus the new building, I think is going to go a long way for that corner of the block.
Thank you.
Great.
So Jalen, would you like to move your item?
Yeah, I'd like to move down, but just before that, I'd like to just thank Lisa and Josh for doing that, and it really included me as representing District A. Wall Street in that area is getting a lot of investments. So to see a business like this and being able to allow them to have a tool to thrive, be open throughout the whole week and compete against online and other businesses is really exciting. And exciting to also hear about the improvements to that area, as that whole area is going to be improved. So thank you again. And yeah, I'd like to move this item to the Common Council.
Great. All in favor? That's all of us. Great. So that's terrific.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
I'll get that
Now-
submitted via request to the Common Council for the meeting on September 24th.
That's it.
All right.
Great. So does anybody want to bring a motion to adjourn? Oh, Nora, you put your hand up. So it's like, are you scratching your head or let's adjourn. All in favor?
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
Josh.
Thank you.
Great job. Really
Bye.
appreciate
Thanks a
it.
lot.
Thanks to you guys
Bye.
for joining. Take care.